I'm Jess Sargis, high-performance speaker, certified mental performance mastery coach, and your guide to mastering your mental game. I went from Ivy League trained attorney to undefeated MMA fighter and back again. Now I help high achievers in any field live with fierce agency, deep alignment, and the power to win consistently when it matters most. You can do it all when you train your mindset, energy, and focus like elite athletes. That's why this is the Legal Athlete Podcast, where each week I use neuroscience, performance psychology, and real-world battle-tested strategies to help you unlock sustainable excellence, bold decisions, and the courage to show up each day as the badass you are. Green light. Let's go. Welcome back to the Legal Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Jess Sargis, and today's guest is someone who works at the intersection of high performance, identity, and neuroscience, truly a fellow legal athlete. Sarah Ennor is a speaker and entrepreneur who is on a mission to make ADHD both human and profitable by sharing her unfolding story. She's a biracial creative, lawyer, insomniac, international athlete, and woman with ADHD whose speaking, consulting, and one-on-one coaching help firms and individuals tap into the ADHD advantage. Sarah was called to the bar in 2007 and has practiced law in almost every environment you can imagine, large firms like Gowlings, in-house roles at Bank of Montreal and Scotiabank, and as a sole practitioner through her consultancy, Growth Counsel. She became an entrepreneur in 2017 and hasn't looked back. As an athlete, Sarah represented Team Canada in Australian football from 2011 to 2018, coached from 2018 to 2020, and earned a spot on the world team in 2011, recognizing the top players in the International Cup. She also helped Canada win the World Championship in 2014. Before footy, she was a varsity field hockey athlete, and competitive sport has been part of her identity for decades. Today, Sarah brings all of those experiences, athlete, lawyer, creative, ADHD thinker, and global competitor, into a body of work that helps people understand how their brain works so they can work with it, not against it. And one of the themes that we're going to explore today together is something that both of us know intimately from our time as athletes and our time as lawyers in the good times: flow. What it feels like, how it works, how it matters, and how it can be a doorway into the most authentic, alive version of ourselves. So I am thrilled to welcome you, Sarah, to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, pleasure. Can't wait to get into this. I think we'll have lots to debate and talk about on this topic for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things when we were prepping for this episode, you said that the only place that you've truly felt that runner's high or flow state is when you're playing footy, Australian football, not in training, not at work. Can you take us into those moments for you? What does flow feel like for you on the field?
Yeah, I can. And I will also say, though, that since we had their prep call, I also have started to think a little bit deeply about it and wonder whether I have actually experienced it a couple of other times, maybe not as intensely.
Okay.
But for me, the question came up actually when I was getting some career coaching a number of years ago, and my coach asked me when, like, we're trying to figure out what I love, and said, when do you feel flow in your life? And I was like, I don't know. I can't say as I have. And then it hit me that it was with footy. And when I thought about why that was, I felt like, we've always got a very specific goal. Like, we're trying to win, we're trying to score, or I'm trying to defend. I knew exactly what my role was. It was very well defined. And, I felt like I was good at what I was doing, which I think is why I would say I felt it a lot more with footy than I ever did with field hockey, for example. And you feel like you've got some control around the outcome of the activity, right? The event. And so as I was thinking about it, I also started to wonder, like, what is flow for me? And I'd heard these runners talk about it, right? I go running and everything flies out of my mind and I'm just there and it doesn't even matter that I'm running anymore. Whereas for me, when I'm running, it's like, how many more steps before I can take a break? I guess I'll try to make it to that next post. Can I walk yet? Can I quit early? Like running has never, ever, ever done it for me. But in footy, it's like, I guess what it feels like is I'm doing the job I know I'm there to do. I'm only thinking about that job. I think it's also that I don't have the opportunity to overthink anything while I'm doing it, where with ADHD, I tend to do that quite a bit. And I think the best thing about it is when you make a mistake, it's not like who cares, right? You don't expect to be perfect when you're playing a sport. You expect to do what you need to, react to what happens on the field, and make adjustments. And I even think when I look at my teammates on the field, they tend to they might, for example, get their heads down when something goes wrong, whereas I'm not even thinking. I often don't even know if we're winning a game, to be honest. Like I sort of have a sense if we're being clobbered, you kind of know it. But sometimes if it's an even enough game, I get them off. I'm like, did we win? What just happened? So it's just this sort of out of body experience of pure joy, I think, just playing and having a good time. And it's almost more fun and more playful and more flow like the more pressure that I'm under, interestingly enough, where some people get really kind of worked up about, we have to win this world championship game, and they might crumble a little bit. And I, on the other hand, kind of rise to the occasion, I think, when that happens.
Yeah, I've noticed it happens a lot, I think, in athletics. There's a couple things I'd like to visit with you about what you said. One is, I think in athletics, it's kind of like the gateway to flow, because you have to be so in that present moment in order to
Yeah.
be effective, to take action, to actually be effective in your sport. You must be only thinking about that sport. It was one of the things that I found. I used the word Zen back in the day when I first started boxing in law school, because, we spent so much time, so much of the day up here, thinking, overthinking, stressing, thinking about the future, worrying. And then you get into the studio, and all you can think of is, how do I throw this punch?
Yeah.
How did that land? How do I adjust for the next one? And you can't think about your course list. You can't think about, the reading. You can't think about your grocery list. You just have to be in that moment. And that's the first thing that I wanted to touch on, about how sport requires you to be so present. And
Yes.
that is such a freeing sense, because you're only thinking about what it is you can control in this moment. Not
Yeah.
even what you're saying, that the game outcome, that's not in your hands. What
Yeah.
actions you're taking are in your hands.
Right.
And so I think that you've landed on something. And for me, it's one of the reasons why I think athletics is so important for our development, as happy whole people, is that we start to practice that present moment focus, where we can find moments of flow and just being, which is I think the human being part, like human being mission, right?
Yeah. And I'm
Yeah.
kind of interested, I'll be interested to hear what you have to say about this. But as you mentioned a minute ago, I told you that I don't tend to feel that flow when I'm preparing for my sport. Maybe it's a bit different in sort of the boxing or MMA
Mhm.
world, because you have to be present even when you're
Yeah.
training, lest you get punched in the face, I'm sure.
Yes.
Whereas for me, it's almost, and part of this, I think, is the ADHD difference that we might
Mhm.
end up exploring a little bit. But um, in the training session, there isn't that urgency. There's not that, I mean, there is to some extent, and you can create it
Right.
somewhat for yourself. But when the game is not on the line, when your teammate's safety is not on the line, when you're, maybe doing a boring rote drill. I mean, I appreciate them, don't get me wrong. I'm just not in flow when I'm doing them. And I think that has to do with this whole present moment. What is calling to me in that moment and what makes it important to me. And I think with ADHDers and our interest-based nervous system, we rely a lot more on us actually enjoying the activity, which is probably another reason why running, no, footy, actual game, yes, right? Because
Yeah.
we need to actually have some emotional attachment and some joy in what we're actually doing in order to get into that state of flow. Not that others don't, but a lot more, I think, because we've got this low dopamine, high need for stimulation. But I absolutely agree with you. That present moment, if I come after work to a training session, I'm still thinking about what work I have to do later and tomorrow. And I'm worried about the traffic I was just in and I'm annoyed. But if I get to the field, like the minute you step on, it's gone, right? You're not thinking at all about what you're doing later, not even about the beer you're going to get to drink on the sideline. Like none of that is relevant. It's just, how do I score? How do I protect my teammates? How do I prevent goals if you're defense? I just think it's so, and the ADHD brain is so full of information and thinking and swirling analysis at all times, that I think that joy really comes from not having any of that for a few minutes in something that you thoroughly enjoy, and to just be going. And to the point that, injury is almost irrelevant, right? It's harder to get into flow if you are already injured and you're already in a mindset that it's going to be painful. But if I've been on the field, I'm sure I've broken fingers, not even known it. I've had a bloody nose and just like stuffed a tissue up there and keep going. People are taking photos or videotaping it. And you just go, and then you get off and you're like, ow, actually, right now. But you didn't even use it while you were playing because you were in that state of flow.
Yeah. 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 Also, adrenaline is a hell of a drug.
Sure.
I will say that too. I've experienced that in training sessions and fights too, where, my nose has been broken or, something's happened and I just don't care. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't even really register at
Yeah.
that moment because my focus is on that. What do I need to do next to dominate this moment, to try to win this fight? But it's not even about the outcome. It's what do I need to do next?
Yes.
Where am I punching? Where am I looking? How am I getting this takedown? And
And that really
I
suits
really
you.
resonate with that, because it's weird to say, a sport like Australian football or boxing is freeing and is zen, but it is. And
Yeah.
maybe that has something to do also. And I'd love your thoughts on this, on the ADHD aspect of it, because for me, for training, the stakes are a little bit higher, but in a game or in a boxing match or an MMA fight, the stakes are high, and that like feels good, I
Yeah.
think, to the brain of it's extra permission to focus on that present moment. Like I have to. The stakes are high. They're even higher than usual. I'm
Yeah.
just right here. And I wonder if that being a high stakes thing, and you've mentioned, you get even more calm and even more focused the bigger the stakes are, how that fits in with the ADHD brain.
Yeah, I think it does. And it goes back to that idea of having an interest-based nervous system where
Mhm.
oftentimes we really have to attach some kind of meaning to the thing that we're doing. So in Aussie rules, I mean, sure, there's meaning around scoring goals and winning a game, but more importantly, there's meaning about protecting your teammates, right? Because they're running around, and if you don't throw a shepherd or you don't warn them and talk to them and tell them what's happening on the field, they get injured. I've been injured because less experienced players haven't been they don't think they know what they're supposed to say, so they don't say anything, and then you get smacked from both sides, and you get injured in those ways. And there is something really, really, really meaningful, I think, to having this team environment where we owe it to everybody on the field to keep each other safe from the other team. Even things like skills need to be spot on so that I don't kick a murder ball into someone's hands and break them, or, not I don't kick at a ball or something and crush some fingers. And I know that's all the rules would prevent that as much as possible, but you do have to be present to know not to do that and aware. So you have to know what the rules are. You have to have good skills, and then you have to be talking and moving your body in a way. And the body of it, I think, to your point about this high stakes, like there's something when you know that you have to make the right choice, or at least a reasonable choice on the field in order to protect yourself as well. I think that really is important, and it brings this incredible meaning to the game, both about, protecting myself. I was a lawyer. I didn't need to be running around on a field. I was talking to someone about you the other day, and they
Yeah.
said boxing, MMA, and law. Like, what about the brain? What about the physical, right? And again, I didn't care when I was playing,
Yeah.
except that I cared to be careful when I was on the field. But you also very quickly realize that too much caution causes more injury. And so, there's a balance of that. I also have to have enough confidence to put my body on the line and try something. But you have to make those reasonable choices. I have been injured for sure, thinking I was making a reasonable choice, realizing at the last second that I was about to make a horrible choice and tore my ACL and all the other L's, all the other CLs in my knee.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I think the meaning is so critical. And what you were saying about presence, I don't know that even though I know that that's kind of what flow is, I think
Mhm.
it's so freeing, like you said, just the idea that I'm not thinking about every other thing on earth. I'm just thinking about what I'm doing in that moment, which is hard to persuade ADHD brains to do, right? Like we don't know
Yeah.
how to calm our minds very well. If you ever ask an ADHD, or have you ever tried mindfulness or meditation, yoga, like, why would I do that? It's too much sitting still in my own head and I can't clear the thoughts anyway. And there's obviously techniques where you can get there,
Yeah.
but sport is a great one where you can just be out on the field and you don't even have to try it. Just poof, everything disappears.
Yeah. I think sometimes we do mindfulness a disservice because the more that I study it, the more I practice it, I feel like when you say mindfulness, people think that you're up here. And I think of mindfulness really again as presence where you're in your body. You're
Yeah.
being mindful of where you are in that moment. And so it's not just, meditation, thinking, letting your mind uh travel where it will. I call it sometimes mental doodling. It's really that you are honing into your present moment, into your body. How am I feeling? Like, what do I hear? What do I see? What do I smell? All the things that are sometimes techniques for calming down an anxiety attack, using all of your senses. It's bringing us back to this present moment where we actually have agency, where we have the ability to impact our current feelings and our current actions. And I think maybe it would be extra helpful for ADHD people to say, all right, mindfulness doesn't mean that you're just in your head. It means you're in the moment, I think.
Well, yeah, and so a lot of the challenges around that for people with ADHD, I think, involve partly the brain part. So,
Mhm.
things I've tried, one that's worked actually really well recently is, how normally if someone is telling you to practice sort of meditation or mindfulness and you're clearing your mind, and then if a thought comes in, you just acknowledge it without judgment, you let it flow away, and you try to empty your mind again. That feels like too much for the ADHD brain that has 7,000 thoughts in it all at once, right? But what I've tried is asking myself a question. So it's almost like a mantra in a way, but
Mhm.
I make it as if it has a purpose, right? So I'm
Mhm.
interested in it. For
Yeah.
example, there was once I was giving a talk and I was feeling a bit anxious beforehand. I wasn't quite prepared. And so I sat for 30 minutes and I just said, what does this group need from me? Like, what do I need to deliver to this group? And of course, at first, like, I don't know what it is, right? And your mind goes, but I just sitting in my apartment, looking out to the lake, which is out the window, looking at the sparkle on the windows, looking at the planes and the birds going by, looking at, the flotsam in the water, whatever it is. And just, watching the sun move across each panel over the course of time. And like you said, sort of being present. But anytime I start to think, oh, I wonder how planes fly actually, and I should go to my phone and check how how Lyft works. Instead, I come back and say, oh no, what does this group need from me right now? Right.
Mhm.
And after a few minutes, you finally start to settle into it, maybe 20 minutes, I would say 25. Suddenly the thing comes to me and I say, oh, they need to hear whatever it is I'm going to tell them today. They don't know anything about ADHD. I'm going to go and give them a taste of this. They're going to learn something. They're students. They're going to have lots of questions. It'll be a great interaction. That's all they need from me today. And boom, I've now been present with myself for quite a period of time. The other thing that can be very difficult for ADHD brains is actually tuning into our bodies. Like we have a
Mhm.
lot of trouble with interoception and really physically being aware of what's going on, which probably helps with those whole injury things. I came off with a torn ACL and then I thought after about 20 minutes, I could probably go back out there. Like I feel fine. Isn't it good? You're like, your knee's not supposed to do that or make that noise or move that way. And like, no, I don't think you should. Um, But that physical thing you're describing, it's hard. I've tried that too, but it has been exceptionally, I can only catch it fleetingly.
Mm,
But when you're trying to think like, imagine what it feels like on the inside of my body. What is the inner skin of myself that's facing into my organs feel like? And when that has worked ever so briefly, maybe for at most 30 seconds to a minute, I've been blown away by what it does to my mind as well. It's like you're in yourself, you're not in the world around you. It sounds very woo woo, but
mhm,
when you can hit that, I can now see it's something to strive for, to being aware of our bodies, to even understanding what we're feeling in a moment, or connecting feelings to the feelings in our body rather than the feelings in our head. Like, I feel like this person hates me, is, if you have to say I feel like
mhm,
it's not a feeling, right? A feeling is anger or frustration or sadness, or those are happiness, joy. Those are feelings, but they feel like something in your body. Excitement feels like something fluttering in my chest, perhaps. For me, it doesn't feel the same for everybody, right?
mhm.
Upset might feel like stomach roiling around, or anger might feel jaw tension or shoulder tension or something, right? So I think it's so important for ADHDers to figure out how to tune into their bodies. And I say this with the full knowledge that I'm terrible at it and I need a whole lot of practice. But you can scooch that into your mindfulness, even if it's a brain-based mindfulness practice. You can absolutely say, how does that make me feel? That
Mhm.
could be your question, your mantra for the session. How am I feeling today?
Yeah.
I've also tried ones where I've said, what do I want to do today? Not what do I
Okay.
need to do, but like, what if I got to choose anything in the world, what do I want? And so those kinds of questions that you would normally not take the time for, and you keep it short enough, but long enough that it's effective. Like 30 minutes is probably the least you could do. Um, but yeah, I think it's a powerful tool for ADHD brains that are always just running and running and running and disorganized in their head in some way.
Yeah. Yeah. It kind of helps us tap into, not to go woo woo again, but tap into the rhythm of being a human. One of the
Yeah.
things that I like to try sometimes too, particularly when I'm struggling with something, struggling with a situation or a decision, is just think about that. And then the question I ask myself is, where do I feel it in my body?
Yeah.
Like you're saying, like, do I feel it in my chest? Do I feel excitement? Do I feel it in my stomach? Do I feel nauseous? Like, do I feel it like in my face? Like, am I starting to get angry? You
Yeah.
know, so asking myself not necessarily what do I feel, but where do I feel it is sometimes like the easier like zero entry way into getting into my body and how I actually feel about something rather than what do I think I should feel? What what are the pros and cons of feeling a certain way about this particular thing?
Yeah, and for women especially, I think, and entrepreneurs as well, like this idea of tapping into yourself as as the one that knows what is right. There was someone on LinkedIn that I follow right now, so Will, and she said, you follow, I know you follow her too, but
Yeah,
she said
Seville,
that,
Seville. Hmm.
yeah, um, oh gosh, now I forget what I was going to say, but oh, about the full body yes she
Yes,
posted about today, right?
yes.
And
Hmm.
we have those, right? And we have other moments where I know I might be pitching to someone and I'm like, this does not feel like they want this, or I want this. It's going to be too hard. It's going to be a pain, right? And so to be able to tune into actual feelings in order to check ourselves and to figure out what it is we actually want rather than what we should want. Like, oh, I
Hmm.
should wish to work with this company because they're big and they pay a lot of money, but it's really not feeling like the right move for me right now. And then leaning into the ones that just feel like those full body yeses. Like, I know this is exactly what I want to do. And it's tough because we tend to kind of gaslight ourselves into thinking the shoulds are the things we need to focus on at times. So
Yeah.
that's the other beauty of the flow on the field. There is no should, right? There's 20 options. All of them are equally valid. Could pass to that person or that person. I could take it myself. I could bounce it. I could draw a foul. I could do all these other different things. And none of them are wrong. They're all an experiment. And I love when I remember to experiment with things. I think it's such a great way to start to tune into ourselves, whether it's our body or our minds or our wants or our likes. Um, and I teach that as well when I give my talks. It's like, we're going to ask people how we can support them, of course. And then we have to understand that whatever we do try together is an experiment, because we don't really know until we try it. So let's try this way. Does this help with the issue at work or doesn't it? Okay, it didn't. How can we iterate a little bit and change it and make it, like, try something different that might work based on what we learned, right? And yeah, experimenting. We should all be now I can finally be a scientist. I don't have to be good at like
Yes.
chemistry or anything, but I can still be a scientist in my own life, right?
Yes, you just have to be curious.
Yeah.
And I think, not to bring everything back to sports, but I love so much about what it trains us to do. And it was the second thing that I wanted to come back to what you said about your experience in sport is that, you you try something and it ends up not being the best thing to do or whatever. I think sport gets us more comfortable with failure, even small failures, being data instead of destiny. Like,
Yeah.
this just means, okay, that I have to try something else. It's an experiment when you're on the field, or again, when you're in the cage or something, you're experimenting. There's consequences. There can be consequences, but you get, I think, a lot more comfortable with experimentation and data, and not having just this linear path, but you're trying different things that are taking you where you hopefully want to go. But that spirit of experimentation, and that not everything is going to give you the answer that you thought you'd get,
Yeah.
or the right answer, but that you just take that as data,
Yeah.
and you move forward with it.
Yeah, definitely. And I, as a largely a defender in my days playing for Canada, for sure. Now that I'm older, I asked to be slotted firmly in the front line and scoring goals instead, because it's a little less decision making and running and things like that. But I just think about every single time you have to defend a breakaway, right? And you've got to decide, am I staying back here? Am I stepping up and taking on the player? What is the choice that I make? And you've got to make that choice not just based on where the player is. You have to make that choice based on who's coming with them on their team and what options they have, who's on your team, where they're standing, what experience level they have, whether they'll know to cover this other thing, whether the player with the ball is likely to kick a goal, or they're going to probably shank it and it won't be a problem and I should just be over there to touch it and move it away, right? Like, there's all these inputs into it, and that's the same as life and work and everything else. You don't know what's coming at you. You think you have all the information, and then you discover, oh, this person thought this other thing that they didn't happen to tell me, and now that changes the whole rule. So, how do I overcome that problem? How do I solve for it? And it's very easy to make it about ourselves, like, oh, I forgot to tell them this, or I didn't ask the right questions to get that information. And yet we beat ourselves up when we do it at work and in the outside world, and even with our family and friends. And yet in sport, we're just like, whoops, that was a goal. Okay, so the next one, we're going to have to maybe try something a little more aggressive, because now we're behind. And so we know that we have to make up for it. And we still have to maybe take a chance. Or, if we're winning, maybe we just have to start taking less chance so that we can maintain the lead and those kinds of things. And we really do treat it as experiment. We don't think of it that way, I don't think, when we're on the field. Like, this is the cerebral podcast version of what flow feels like and how we make choices. But that truly is what we're doing, is we're just experimenting constantly. And it's joyous. Like, it's again so freeing to know I can try something, I can fail at it. It is not the end of the world at all. And there's still 40 more minutes to make up for it and figure a way to win. And we've seen it happen, right? You've been probably down in a boxing or an MMA match, and then all of a sudden you win anyways, right? And that's all a product of the choices and experiments that you've made.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think contrasting a lot of what we experience in the legal profession of perfectionism and overthinking, it's a I think it's an automatic flow disruptor when you're too worried about, is this perfect? Is this optimal?
Yeah.
Versus what we do in sport is, let's try and see. So when you've been practicing, in the legal context, and you're experiencing a disruption of flow, you're experiencing some perfectionism. Are there any things that you've tried that have helped you find it more often, or find at least let go so tightly of the perfectionism that we're trained to expect ourselves and judge ourselves about in the legal profession?
No. Uh, so, okay, so I have a couple things to say about this. The first is it's not even just disrupting flow, right? It's
Mhm.
disrupting the trust that we are entitled to have in ourselves, right?
Yeah.
If there's only one way to do something and there's no experimentation and we've always done it this way, and why aren't you doing it this way? We don't believe we're competent, right? We now think I'm a failure because that's not the way I would do it, or I don't naturally do it that way, or I failed at doing it that way because it didn't work for my brain. Um, for me at work, it was things like the way that I filled up space in a meeting and didn't really leave space for others to talk, or the way that I showed empathy, which I think is still, now that I understand how I show empathy as a person with ADHD, I still think it's a perfectly valid way to show empathy. But it's not what we've been trained is the way to show empathy in the greater world, right? If someone says, I ask you how you're doing today, and you say, oh, I'm not so great, my dad just died. And then I say, well, I have a dad, I'm sorry to hear that, I have a dad and he's been sick before, and that sounds terrible, and here's all the ways that I overcame this thing, right? That seems to a lot of people like I'm making it about me, and I'm not saying what they expect, which is, I'm so sorry to hear that. Are you okay? Tell me more. I will listen quietly while you speak. And it's not because I don't care. It's because I am trying to show you how we have something in common. Look, we both have a similar situation. Of course, it's not the same, but
Yeah.
here is
You're
something.
relating.
See how I can understand what you're going through to some degree, right? And so that kind of feedback was stuff that I would get, like, why don't you have any EQ? Why doesn't don't get along with this group? Why, and I'm just sitting here like, I don't understand the question. I'm a delight as far as I can tell. Like, I would want to be my friend. What are you asking me? Right? There's nowhere to go, but now I don't trust myself. Oh, I guess I don't care about other people. I guess I'm a bully. I guess I don't leave space for others and I'm just all about me, is that kind of feedback. And so it erodes that trust in ourselves, where I know for a fact I'm a very empathetic person. I care deeply about people. I almost cry. I had I could feel my face starting to go when I said, when you have to protect your teammates on the field. It's like I could feel myself feeling really emotional about that. So I am an empathetic person, but now am I though? Because they're telling me I don't show it well. So that trust, I think, is huge. I don't think I ever got good at it in the office, to be honest. I think when I was working in that environment, there was an element of I'm not capable of not being myself at times. But I think a part of why I left the practice of law is that exact reason, because I was seeing this perfectionism bleed into everything in my life. If my whole job as a lawyer is to be right about things because clients' files are on the line, their livelihoods, their money, whatever it is, their children, like whatever the thing, then I need to be right every argument I ever have with my husband, with my parents, with my brother, right? I have to correct everybody who says something in a conversation. Oh, that's not how you pronounce that word. No, that's not how you right? Just that also was bothering me. I was seeing it happen and unfolding, and I said, why do I need to be right about everything? Like, why? And also, then when it comes to making decisions, it freezes us, right?
Mhm.
Because we're trying to think of all the different ways that this thing could like we're now trying to see risk as well as lawyers, right? Not just the perfectionism. Where's the problem? That was another annoyance of my husband's, I'll tell you. Like, we would sit there and say, like, let's buy this house maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good price, but what if it's a bidding war and it's more? What if we don't we have to renovate it? What if it's not in the best neighborhood? What if the market falls? And you just talk yourself out of it before you've moved forward at all, right? And
Mhm.
so I think there's an element of me really desperate to practice making decisions without overthinking whenever I can, and trying to remind myself, because it's like in one ear, I forget it the next time I do it. But an example might be booking a plane ticket.
Mhm.
I might spend 6 hours of hyper focus looking at plane tickets to maybe save $5, right? And like, oh, this one's a little less. Like, maybe I'll find another one that's $10 less, or maybe I won't. And then by the time I finally book the plane ticket, maybe it's even more because I waited too long and I took too many. I looked at it for too long. Um, but what is the benefit of that? Even if I did save $5 or $10, is it
Yeah.
worth 6 hours of my life? It's not. Pay the $10. Just pay the 50. Pay the $100 for the thing. It doesn't matter. But I forget, and I'm like, oh, but money is important, and I need to make sure that I get the best deal, right? And we all have our own things that we will focus on, but those kinds of things are those the perfectionism, the overthink. I was tired of doing it. And so I'm testing myself now. I'm trying to do things like, okay, I want to buy this ticket. Um, I just need to take this one. I'm just going to pay the extra so I don't have to leave at 6 a.m. I'm going to leave at noon. That's great. And trying to train myself with those little tiny micro choices, which I think is also how we ADHDers might get themselves into flow a little bit better, is to find the things that are meaningful, find the things that are easy wins, that are winnable, that you have control over, that you know you're competent at. You know, I should breathe before I keep going on to the next topic here. But the advice to eat the frog, have you heard that? Where people
Yeah.
say, you know, do the hardest thing in the morning and the rest of your day will be easy and great. That doesn't work for ADHD brains. Like, we have to take the smallest thing so that we win at it. I just
Yeah.
sent my first email. I just unloaded my dishwasher. I just insert tiny thing here. Now I start to have confidence that I'm capable. I can probably do a second task and it might be small, or I might suddenly think, well, with all these tiny tasks I have behind me, why don't I write a book, right? Like, how about I
Mhm.
spend a whole bunch of time and design an offer or something like that?
Yeah.
Um, I'll probably still stop midway, but that is how we get ourselves going. That's also how we get into flow a little bit more, is to find the importance of the thing that we're doing, or the thing that is impactful to us about it, and remember that, to find the emotion, to find the little win that you can do at the beginning that starts to make you think, okay, I am capable, I am going to win this, and then you sort of flop into it as soon as you get on the field, if you can.
Yeah, I love that because I think flow it gives us kind of a glimpse of who we are at our most aligned,
Yeah.
right? Of when we are in the flow of like that's who we are. This is what we enjoy. This is what we enjoy about ourselves and
Mhm.
about the world. So I wonder a little bit, you know, what do you think your experiences in flow on the field in footy reveal to you about your identity, you know, beyond law, beyond titles, beyond societal expectations? What do you think that it's shown you about who you are at your most aligned?
I think the first and foremost thing is I am a person who likes to play. And I don't just mean play a sport, I mean be silly, joke around, try things, be impulsive. Obviously, I have ADHD, so yes, I like to be impulsive, take risks, and you know, all of those things. But what it's also shown me is I could look at it and tell you why my whole path has been how it is. Right? I am a competitor. I like to compete. I like to learn new skills. You know, Aussie football, people confuse it with rugby all the time. And I like to say that really the only thing it has in common is that it's a full tackle sport with a similarly shaped ball. But like, you know, it's, you can't throw the ball in football. It doesn't have to go any particular direction. It can go any direction. The point of tackling is different because I just want to dispossess someone of the ball so I can pin an arm, and that's a valid tackle that has the same effect as crushing someone into the ground. That doesn't help me because now I'm lying on the ground. So, you know, it's constantly moving and flowing and things. But there's a lot, like, if you can't throw the ball, you have to hand pass it. Well, there's a technique to that so that you don't ditch it on the ground at someone's feet every time, or you get it far enough even when you're under pressure and being tackled. So practicing that and getting that, the skill, and learning that when it is more complex than most people are willing to try to do. Field hockey was similar. You know, it's a flat stick. You got to dribble it by flipping the stick over. Like, that's not a natural skill for most people. It's ice hockey style, right? Like chopping it one side and the other, hitting it in one direction. You know, you're not hitting it backwards most of the time. I know you can, but the complexity of that, my brain likes that stimulation. And I think that's one of the components of flow too, right? Is
Mhm.
this balance of, it's challenging enough and
Yeah.
it pushes you to your limit, but you still are capable of doing it and having some control over how the outcome unfolds, right? And so the fact that I'm a competitor, the fact that I like to learn things, the fact that I care about people, again, like this protection element is one of my favorite parts. I don't ever have, some people play football and they're like, I can't wait to go crush other people on the field and tackle them. It's going to be so good. It's going to get my aggression out. I have none of that. And I think that might surprise people sometimes because they may feel that I'm a bit of a assertive, for lack of a better word, person. And yet I'm not out there to go destroy people. I'm out there to protect my teammates, to make the play by opening a space. And so I love that I can do that too. I can show my compassion and my care on the field, even though that doesn't look like what I'm doing to the outside observer. Um, Defenders know. Defenders are fully aware of what's going on. But I can look at all of these things and say, I know who Sarah is. She's a fun loving person who likes to push herself, likes to learn things, likes to protect others, likes to care about her teammates. That's what it's taught about me about myself. I like to be myself as well. Like this alignment, I like to just be able to say what I think and not have to second guess whether it's going to offend someone or hurt someone's feelings. There's an element of that. Like if I see that I'm hurting someone's feelings, or if it's something that I know will hurt someone's feelings, obviously I'm going to take those steps. But at the same time, I should be somewhat allowed to be myself. And if that is not palatable for some people, it doesn't really have to matter, right? And it doesn't on the field
Yeah.
usually. So
Yeah. I think that's also one of the joys of entrepreneurship. And I'd love to talk to you as someone who transitioned from more traditional legal roles into a more of a mission driven entrepreneurial work. How do you think that has changed your relationship to flow and to alignment? Do you think it's easier to access in your work now, or does it show up in new ways?
So I have a lot to say on this question, but I might have to shift it around a little bit. So I don't
Okay.
know that I would describe it as me being better at flow again. I think
Hmm.
I would go back to this trust concept a little bit, which may have, it does have to do with flow, but I guess it's just not how I envision it when I think of it. Um, so one thing that has very much changed is a lot of the commentary that I used to receive in as the constructive bits of my performance reviews has shifted. Like I find myself actually drastically more aware of what other people might be thinking or feeling, drastically more open. Because remember, I'm on this ADHD journey. I was just diagnosed less than 3 years ago,
Hmm.
and I'm still figuring out what that looks like. I'm figuring out, when you go from being a lawyer to being now, it's like, well, is it the ADHD or is it the change to entrepreneurship? Is it the perimenopause that's at my door? Like, what is it that's causing all these changes in the way that I'm interacting with people? But I really do truly think that as a person who didn't really understand what ADHD was before I was diagnosed, who is learning what it looks like for me, who has said things and had feedback from audiences that, oh, that's not how everybody experiences it. And realizing how much when I was working in my older roles, I thought everybody understood what I was saying because they said, "Oh yeah, me too," all the time.
Hmm.
And now I realized that they had no idea what, because I didn't even realize what the different option was until I took medication and realized, oh, this is what a clear mind and a focused mind looks like. This is what it feels like to be able to go to the gym once in a while rather than to have it be physically impossible to get out of my house. I look at those things now and see how I didn't understand myself and how harmful that me too acceptance and just assumption without more questions can be. That I feel as a person, I'm now so much more open. I'm I'm much more aware, and I say in my talks about how, this is not how my experience is not everybody's. It's my experience. You'll see similarities in yourself and there'll be things that are totally different. And so I think that's gone beyond even just ADHD into the whole world of anything I had an opinion on before. Not that I was not previously willing to be persuaded off of it, but I was also a competitive arguer. So I'm like, okay, but no, but you have to come with my side too. I would hear it, but it would take a lot for me to move my position. And now I think my position changes quite rapidly. And I think I'm even a more compassionate person, or at least a more self-aware, more externally aware person when it comes to. I don't know if I answered your question. Kind of forget what the question was now. So
It's okay. It's fascinating regardless.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I think that kind of self-awareness of how you've you've changed the way you approach things since your diagnosis and since learning how to work better with yourself. Now you're an expert in helping individuals and firms to tap into their ADHD advantage. How do you help them, let's say, understand their own brain a little bit better, particularly around things like attention or novelty, or energy, so that they can tap into that same ADHD advantage?
yeah. I'm just going to take a note here so I don't forget what you were just saying, because I want to come back to some of those things. So in my talks, there's usually three groups of people. There's people that have ADHD and they see themselves in my story and they think, oh my gosh, you're describing me in some ways. I have these other things, and they're just on the edge of their seat feeling seen and heard. So this is like making it human, both for them to say, oh, I'm not the only person who feels like this, because we don't talk about the fact that all of these symptoms that we have kind of make it, they're all the things you need to do office work, right? How do I plan and problem solve? How do I manage my emotions? How do I, how am I self-aware? How do I take risk? What impulsiveness do I have at the office? Like if you started going and saying like, I have all these inconsistent executive functions, people don't talk about it. And so they get to see themselves in me and they feel, oh, that I'm not alone. This is a thing. I feel very validated by that. And so companies are appreciated when they bring me in, because, oh, like you're actually talking about this and showing us that you care. Then there's the people who might not have ADHD, but start to realize that someone they know does, right? It's like, oh, maybe my kid has ADHD. Maybe my husband has ADHD. Maybe my colleague, who I thought was just trying to get my goat every single day and being an annoying person, is actually just wired to think differently than me. And it's annoying to me because I haven't gotten curious about it. And so they then start to open up and say, all right, well, maybe I should get curious and start asking questions and start believing that people are trying their best. And then there's the group of people who maybe are not aware that they have anybody with ADHD in their life, because they still don't quite, but they're starting to understand what it is. And now they're starting to look for the cues. And even if they didn't think that they worked with someone, knowing full well that at least 3 to 5% of adults have ADHD, and studies show that at least 12.5% of lawyers have ADHD. So if you're talking in a law firm, like you definitely know a lot of people with ADHD. They might now be on the lookout for, what is going on there. So the audience isn't purely just the people with the ADHD. The human side of it partly is to support those folks. And that's what I do a little bit more of the one-on-one work that I do. But it's also to help the third group and even the second group start to get curious and understand what's out there and what might be happening. And also, the tools that I'm teaching, they're not just for ADHD. They work for any kind of difference. If I don't understand why someone refuses to be as aggressive as I would like to be in an email, if I can get curious and focus on the outcome I'm trying to achieve and open to different ways of doing things so that it maybe helps with work with them and their issue, like that person doesn't have to tell me they had childhood trauma and like creating conflict is like the worst thing they could possibly think of doing. They can ask for help that allows the thing to get done still without them having to put themselves in a really uncomfortable position. So that humanity I'm trying to bring is busting the stigma around what we all think ADHD is, the hyperactive little boy. His parents feed him nothing but chocolate. They don't parent him. They don't care what he does. He's running around classrooms and disrupting everything. To understand, oh no, it's also 45-year-old lawyers who've been wildly successful, who've been paid a lot of money, who have crazy titles, on their resume, and who have been valued in the workplace. And then for me, I mean, I've had, I think, a very lucky experience with my ADHD to some extent when I learn about what other people experience. I got very high ratings all the time. And then I got comments about my behavior, my EQ, those kinds of things. Which is hard because it's like, I'm great at my job, but I'm a bad person. Right. And that's what it feels like to some extent.
Yeah.
I also have very outsized self-confidence. So I didn't go all the way down like, you're like, oh, sorry you felt that. I didn't believe, I was like, you keep telling me I'm a bad person, but you're probably wrong. Cause I feel like I'm anyway. But there are people out there who would take that as a crushing blow, right? People who experience rejection sensitivity, who think, I am a bad person. I don't deserve this job. And then how are you thriving when you're trying to be in the office doing your job and you think that you're crap at it all the time, right? So when it comes to things like energy, tapping into energy and attention, the conversation with these groups as well is around what might that actually look like, so that when you try to work with your energy or understand what your attention is doing, your boss is not thinking, why isn't she at the office at 10 o'clock in the morning? Why is she only coming in at 11? Why isn't she putting FaceTime in? But then at the same end, oh, she's still there at 10. She must be a really diligent person in the night. No, I can't work. You tell me to come in at 8 o'clock, but now I haven't slept because I'm a night owl. So I've slept for 4 hours or 3 hours and I'm back in the office sitting at 8 o'clock, scrolling on Facebook and drinking coffee and chatting to my neighbors because I can't get going, right? I'm not ready yet to function at my best with my energy. And then, of course, I start working well at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and that means I now have 8 hours of work to do. So yes, I'm still there at midnight, of course. So I share those stories so that people can think, oh, maybe we are overemphasizing this FaceTime. Maybe we're overemphasizing when people come to the office. And when it comes to attention, because just because you mentioned that specifically, I think it's so important for people to understand that ADHD is not a lack of attention. It's actually an incredible amount of it. Like I see everything, right? I'm looking at you. I'm in my mom's studio right now, her art studio at my parents' house. I'm not actually at my normal location. And, I'm noticing every time I put my glasses. I'm seeing the pictures around me. I'm wondering if you can see the water bottle beside me here on the table. Like, oh, I need to take a note. Did I say this thing yet? And so everything is there, which is why we have trouble actually just consistently directing our attention at the thing that's important. That's why
Mm-hmm.
half the time I forget the question. Like, oh, did I actually answer? What was she asking me about again? Oh, that was alignment. I didn't really say about alignment. I just talked about this other thing because I've also gone through 50 other things and other ideas have come in that come off the thing that I just said. And so it's important for people to know that because it can be a difficult thing if you're sitting talking to someone and it doesn't seem like they're paying attention, right? That can be
Mm-hmm.
a problem in a workplace. But if you can tap into it and say, oh, but they're looking at this agreement I asked them to review, but they're also thinking about the declaration of trust they drafted 5 years ago and the meeting that we had that time and the decision that someone said and the rule that like the unspoken rule that someone told us about and the timing and how it impacts the regulators and how it's actually going to impact the business goals that they have. If you can tap into that, suddenly you've got someone who can see that big picture where others might be more, every person has their own brain. Someone else might just be like, are there any typos? Did I draft it perfectly? Does it say what I actually wanted to say? But if you don't have the context as to why you want it to say that or why we care, like get an ADHD in the room because they will be able to tell you, right? So just trying to help people understand that there are pitfalls sometimes, but I think the benefits far outweigh what the pitfalls are because there's so many other skills that come with unfocused attention. It's the creativity, it's the curiosity, the energy that we bring to the office as well. Like I'm a fun time. Trust me. I am the one that makes sure that there's always a party going on. People are having lunches, people's birthdays are being celebrated. And I think that's a good thing to have in the office. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of it comes into, again, learning to be curious and not judgmental about it. That's my favorite Ted Lasso line. That he's be curious, not judgmental. Because not only does it open you up to moving forward, to understanding data, to advancing, but when you're judgmental, you're by nature you're closing something down. Like there
yeah,
might be an amazing solution that you're just not going to see because you've decided to be judgmental first
yeah,
instead of being curious about a person, about a situation, about a question. And so I love how often we've been returning to the idea of get curious, about yourself and others without judging so
yeah.
that you can experiment, so you can figure out what works for you, for your team, for whatever it is that your goals are. That you're going to get a lot closer to them if you can be curious and not judgmental first.
Yeah, and especially since this is a legal podcast, I think, going back to this idea that perfectionism and doing it the way we've always done it and spotting risks and problems is a part of
Mhm.
our training. I think a part of our training is also combat and is also rightness and is also persuasion, right? And so I say be curious, and I think it's hilarious that this is what I'm touting as a person who stood in my office with like, there is only one way to do this, and you've done it wrong, and I've done it right, right? Like that is how I went through my legal careers, and I
Yeah.
know for a fact, as you said, there's times when I missed something that was such a good solution, such a tidy solution, so much less work, let's say,
Hmm.
because I was too busy defending my own position and not opening my mind up to what else could be. Why would you say that? What makes you think that? What rule are you looking at? What imagination are you implementing right now? And I think we can get there. And I think all of this is not even just about this is the profitable side of it, right? It's not just about how we can support other ADHDers in the workplace. Like I don't, that's not the only result that we get from that. We also get I have my cost center hat on and I say, things like we're going to reduce turnover and we're not going to have wasted money on training and, all of these other things. We're going to boost loyalty, and the business doesn't care about any of those things. The business actually cares about the other hat that they're wearing, which is the revenue generating hat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if we can serve the communities that we live and work with because we have people who can relate to our clients. Like maybe you're not getting all the ADHD clients that you could. Maybe you're not attracting Richard Branson to be the client of your law firm if all you're doing is telling him all the risks that he's going to face and all the problems with this idea. And all he wants is a solution, right? Now you bring in someone with ADHD who can see the big picture, can understand what he's trying to drive at, and can find something and explain, even because we have high risk tolerance as an ADHDer in theory. I mean, lawyers with ADHD that have had beaten out of them, I'm not sure if we do have high risk tolerance anymore, but naturally we do. And so to be able to say, listen, Rich, like you can do this thing. Here's a way that reduces your risk. It's not risk free, but if you have the appetite, you could probably still take this approach, right? And so we get better decisions, we get better products and services designed. If I think about the number of apps that people have designed that do not work for my brain, right? The hiring process, you go on LinkedIn and it says, click over here and go to Workday, and you go over to Workday and you upload your resume. Great. You got all my work history now. And then the next question is like, enter your work history day by day. Like I'm not applying for your job now. Like there's no way that I'm going to sit here for an hour because I think you're ridiculous. The why doesn't make sense to me. I'm mad at you because you're making it difficult. I'm annoyed that you didn't just think like, take the PDF and now you know my work history. So I'm not even going to apply. Well, what talent are you missing out on when you hire people? You're missing out on me, number one, and I'm pretty talented. But you're missing out on all kinds of other people too, who would have applied, who clicked right through and were ready to apply for this job. And then you made it too hard for them. So now they're not going to do it, right?
Yeah.
We get better. We get processes that are better. We get decisions that are better. We get products that are better. If you include someone who's disabled, you would not have designed the Barbie dream house with an elevator that didn't fit the wheelchair in the first place, because they would have said, wait a second, we might need to expand that and put a bigger elevator in. And then you attract those clients, both because you're serving them in a way that works for them and because they see the reputation that you're building for yourself of like, you're a place that cares about serving the community in the right ways and all the ways that matter to the different elements. So again, I forget what the question was. So did I answer that?
we went a few different ways with it, but basically I think you've answered the question. I just have a couple more for you. I know we're almost at time. For someone who's listening who might feel stuck or scattered or disconnected from flow, especially high functioning folks who are high achievers or ADHD professionals, are there any simple or practical shifts that they can start to practice to get into flow more consistently, or be able to find that either in work or in play?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing with ADHD particularly is and probably high performers in general, lawyers as a class, I think we have to start treating self-compassion as literally the most powerful tool we have, because we can beat ourselves up for not getting into flow enough. And if like as an ADHDer, it's hard to get into it predictably. It's hard to stay in it sometimes if it's not an interesting enough topic, activity. And hyper focus is kind of a version of flow in a way, but it is just this sort of really unpredictable, like, oh, I just went down this rabbit hole and now I'm in hyper focus. It's going to be 3 hours. It might not be like I can get myself out of it right away either. I might go on for hours and hours and hours, right? So being compassionate about the fact that everybody is different and it's not like flow is not the only way to operate. Of course, it's great when you can get there, but understanding that that's not necessarily the only option. But the little things I think that we can do to try to get ourselves into it more often is starting with those little tasks. As I said, like don't eat the frog, just have a little crumb, get yourself some momentum and get yourself going in that way is the first thing. Those micro goals, like again, the winnable things, right? Just something that you know you're going to do and you're going to do it right and you're going to do it well and you're going to do it quickly is going to be what you need to start with. You have to also find some stimulation for yourself. So I used to find this so annoying, but when I played Aussie football and we were playing for Canada, we were in Australia, we had our captain, she'd put like music on, like pump up music. She'd put it on her shoulder and she'd walk around the change room as we're getting ready. And I was just like, that doesn't work for me. Like I need to be by myself in my own head, creating the meaning, right? And that was going to be the next thing that I was going to say is I want to be on my own, creating the meaning about this thing. This is the only chance I'm going to have to play for my country. I'm getting old. I was wrong. It turned out I said this to myself in 2011, and I played till 2018, like every year except the one that I broke my knee, hurt my knee. But yeah, I want to do other things. I want to stand with someone and just hand pass. I want to get physical touch on a ball. I want to get consistent reps in and know what this is going to feel like on the field. I want to bump into people and start to get used to the feeling of contact, right? So find what stimulates you. Maybe for you, it's going to be music, like my captain. Maybe for me, it's going to be movement, or, if it's at work, maybe it's going to be timers. Maybe you're going to have to change your location so that you can, if you're used to sitting on your couch and doing your work all the time. But like for me, I actually put shoes on. And then I feel like it's a work day and I'm leaving the house, or I'm sitting up. There's no reason to put my foot on anything now. I'm sitting at my desk, ideally, if I really need to get something done. And then the last thing I think is, because I've already talked about the connecting the importance to that thing, like reflecting in advance, thinking, why is this an important thing to do? Why is this a meaningful thing to do? Importance is not as helpful as meaning. And then working with your natural energy, right? We all have it. Some people are morning people, some people are night owls. If you're able to do that at all, try to, the most important tasks, at least. If you are peaking at 2 and 3 and 4 in the afternoon, then do the menial things and the boring things when you're not, or like little things to get yourself the momentum, and then dive into the hard stuff when you're at your peak. Those are my tips.
Yeah. Great advice. Great advice. And it all starts with self-compassion and curiosity again, of what is working for me, what doesn't work for me, and let's try.
And
And
it's okay.
let's land on it.
If it doesn't work and you don't get it done today, try again tomorrow. Or maybe it wasn't important in the first place if you didn't get it done today. So don't try it at all. Don't add it back to your to-do list. So now you have 50 things instead of 49. Try to keep those to-do lists as small as possible and chip away at them. I think that's something I, in hindsight, have really learned from being away from the corporate environment. Everything always seemed urgent, which was good for my brain because that gets me going on things. And yet nothing was actually as important or as urgent as anybody ever said, right?
Yeah.
And so to be able to recognize that if you have put something on your to-do list 3 days in a row and you're not doing it, just revisit, is it actually important? Because it could still be important just as long term, but could also be something you thought you were going to die if you didn't do by tomorrow, and you haven't done it by 3 tomorrows, and you could probably just let it go. Maybe you don't need to do it at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great advice. So I have just one more question for you. That it's the question I ask everyone who comes on the podcast. I stole it from Oprah, who is one of my idols. She got it from Gene Siskel, the film critic. And the question is, what is one thing that you know for sure? It can be about life. It can be about work. But one thing in this world that you know for sure.
We're all worthy. Yeah. I'm going to cry if I say too much right now, but yes. So I think I am lucky enough to have had a Caribbean firecracker of a mother telling me that I am enough my whole life. We don't always believe it because we also hear from her. She told me to like sit still and stop fidgeting and my own voice and all these other things that my coworkers said. But, and we hear it from our teachers and we hear it from our coworkers. Right. And so, I'm lucky to have clung to that. It can be hard to cling to it when you're being told that you're not enough and you're not worthy. We know ourselves best. We are worthy. And I want everybody to know that and try to be as aligned and authentic as they can in every space they occupy, whether that's work or sport or life. That's one thing I know for sure.
Beautiful. I love it. What a great way to end the podcast. Thank you so much, Sarah, for being here. No, I love it. I love it. I am often accused of being cringefully earnest. So I love it when I meet someone who also is as empathetic and genuinely caring as you are. So it's been a pleasure talking with you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being here and giving us more of an insight into the ADHD brain for high achievers and letting me talk to another legal athlete. I love that opportunity.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm so thrilled, and you're an excellent podcast host, by the way. So
Thank
that's
you.
lovely. But yeah, it's the only way to be is entirely earnest all the time, in my opinion. So it gets me in
Yeah.
trouble sometimes, but I live by it. So
All
thank
right.
you.
Earnest Sisters Unite. And if people want to get in touch with you, what are the best ways? I can put specifics in the show notes too, but how should they reach
Yeah,
out?
so I'm probably most active on LinkedIn. So find me there by name, Sarah Ennor. And you can also find me on my website, which is growthcouncil.ca. CA is important because otherwise you're going to go to Pittsburgh and meet some other lovely lawyers. But the Canadian site is where I live. And yeah, I would love to connect with anybody who's interested in my work or just hearing a ridiculously earnest person on the internet talking about how I fail and how I win all the time.
I love it. That's human. That's magnetic.
Great.
I love those stories. Thank you again, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. That's a wrap. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Legal Athlete Podcast. If today's episode fired you up or gave you something to train with, hit follow, leave a review, and share it with a fellow high achiever who's ready to raise their game. Want to bring this energy to your team, firm, or event? Or are you ready to train for your next high-stakes moment with me directly? Click the link in the show notes to connect. I'm Jess Sargis, and I coach the bold. Lawyers, leaders, and anyone ready to lead their life with fierce agency. Green light. Let's go.